when you're confident and you believe in what you're doing and you believe that you can represent it well, sales is easy, right? And I think what he learned and what I've learned since is that we're really not selling. We're just presenting an opportunity for somebody. And if it's a fit, great. If it's not a fit, great, because it needs to be win-win.
Welcome to Small Business Pivots, a podcast designed for small business owners. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, a small business coach and founder of Boss, where we make business ownership simplified for success so that you can create a business that runs without you. To learn more, go to businessownershipsimplified.com. And be sure to hang out to the end of this episode for my recap and Coach's Corner, where I challenge you with one thing to take action on that will move the needle in your business before our next episode. Our guest today is Paul Neal. Paul is the owner of Vantage Point Commercial Capital and a trailblazer in empowering business owners to create wealth, autonomy, and control by owning their own commercial space. He's not just an expert in commercial real estate. Paul is a master at making complex topics accessible and engaging. Having owned multiple entities through the years, Paul offers an abundance of takeaways that any business owner can implement today to see significant growth in their future. His new book, Unleash Your Business, Unlock Wealth, Autonomy, and Control by Buying Your Building and Firing Your Landlord, delves into this transformative approach to commercial property ownership. As our podcast guest today, Paul brings a unique blend of expertise, wit, and conversational warmth. He has a knack for breaking down intricate financial concepts into enjoyable and digestible discussions, making every interview not only informative but also genuinely entertaining. His stories and insights offer practical wisdom that resonates with anyone aspiring to achieve greater success in their business ventures. Let's get to Paul now to learn the pivots and mistakes he made while building substantial wealth so you can do the same. All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivots. We have a special guest from around the world, and I have found that no one can say their name or business like the founder. So tell us your name, your business, a little bit about what you do, and we'll get going.
Yeah, Michael, absolutely. Glad to be here. Paul Neal. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Our business right now, I've always been in and around the real estate finance world. And where we focus right now is helping business owners, small business owners that have a local presence, whether it's for employees, patients, customers, clients, or whatnot, that's growing, who are leasing their commercial space. We show them and help them how to buy that space so they can become a full owner, not just an owner of a business and a renter of a space, but an owner and an owner. Because I found that most business owners, that's really what they're seeking, right? Is they want to be the owner, they want to be in control, and so there's a ton of advantages there, a ton of misconceptions there, and so we just focus on educating the business owners and helping the ones that it makes sense for take those steps.
Fantastic. So, well, let's get started. So we were talking earlier, you've owned businesses since the 80s, so I'm sure we have some golden tips for all of our listeners today. In your upbringing, what kind of led you to the entrepreneurship world?
Yeah, that's a funny question because I don't really come from a family of entrepreneurs. Perhaps me and my brother are sort of the first in the family, the first of four. My parents sort of led the traditional life. You know, my dad went to school, got an engineering degree, worked in engineering, and took a job for the federal government as a civilian engineer. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom until we were later in school. Then she went off and got a nursing education. And I think the thing that drove me to want to go into business was I always had big dreams, basically. I thought I was pretty good at math and science, and so I went into engineering as well. That's what I studied, and it came pretty easy to me. And I always thought that I was going to invent something because I always had these dreams. And I know it seems kind of crazy, and I have a lot more depth in my life than this, but back then it was like, hey, I just want to be rich.
Yeah. That's all we knew, right?
I remember
there wasn't technology to play with. You had to do something with your life.
Yeah, but I remember this distinctive. You don't have too many memories from my childhood now back in 50 some years ago, But I remember my dad asked me one time, we're standing in their bathroom and looking in the mirror. I must have been 8 or 9 or something. And he said, "So what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I just looked at him in the mirror and said, "I want to be rich," and smiled, and he smiled too, just kind of nodded his head and all that. And and we came from I had a decent lifestyle. My family was by no means rich, and a solid middle class family, but one income, 4 kids, and all that. And but I had a friend down the street, and this may have been where it came from. That always he was only had 2 kids, and both mom and dad worked, had a little extra spendable money, and so when we would always go to the movies or do something, his mom would slip like a $10 bill in his pocket, and then she would always slip some money in my pocket too. And I'm like, wow,
nice.
this is great,
Yeah.
you know. So I really think it kind of stemmed from that. It's like, wow, you could have more, you could be more and do more, and I think that's where kind of the seeds came from.
So you went to college for engineering and got out, and what happened?
Yeah, so mine's an interesting story. I studied electrical engineering, and our school had an amazing program called the co-op program. And so the co-op program really educated me early, where essentially you're in school for a few semesters, and then you go work for a company like as a full-time employee in engineering. And basically you're like an intern, but you're paid. And so you get to learn in different experiences. And I had some really good ones, but I also had some eye-opening ones. And I remember sitting there was this boardroom. Excuse me, it wasn't a boardroom. It was like a little office, like a small conference room, maybe 10 by 12. There were 6 or 7 of us in there. And this particular company made these network test boxes when the internet was just kind of starting to come around. And they were very custom. They were expensive, like $80,000 for a box, custom built. And they were arguing for a couple of hours about the color of the little rubber booties that went on the box, right? And I'm like, really? This is what I'm gonna do for for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I just it didn't mesh with my internal drive that said, hey, I wanted more and I wanted to be free, and I couldn't sit in this, fluorescent light, 10 by 12 room and have these meaningless arguments. And so it taught me a lot. And so fortunately, sort of during that same time, I saw my sister go into business with her husband at the time, and they started having some success. They were in the Research Triangle Park area of North Carolina. And again, it got my attention. And through a series of events, we were able to actually start working in business with them, kind of as a junior partner for a little while, and then became our own partner. And at that point, it was like, wow, we're doing better here with this little marketing business and distribution business than I would have made as an engineer anyway. And so I'm like, bye-bye engineering. It's not what I wanted to be. I still like math, but
Yeah. You don't want to argue about colors.
I don't want to argue about things that just seemed like to me, I've never been a major in the minor kind of a guy. And it seemed like you had to really do that. That on top of the fact that I started working when I was young. I was a lifeguard at the local community pool. And even before that, I worked in the snack bar. I think I was like 14. And I just didn't like people telling me what to do, even at that age.
Well, I know that some people like, what does the journey or the story, why is that so relevant? And it's, well, because that's how we connect. As business owners, we all have a story. And for some reason, a lot of us business owners were like, was my life worse than his or hers? Maybe that's why they're so successful. And it's like, no, we all have a journey and a story, but it's how we overcome those.
Yeah.
And so you got out, you stepped out. What was your first business?
Believe it or not, it was a network marketing business. And they had I saw my sister get in it and kind of do really well, but I poo-pooed on it for the first couple of years. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. But then as I saw them succeed in the business and the opportunity, and then they introduced us to some of the people, like, okay, well, maybe this is more of a legitimate business than I thought. And and I say we because my then girlfriend, who then has since been my wife for 30 some years, got involved with them and had a pretty good amount of success early on. So that was fun, and that we in that business we learned a lot about setting goals and dreaming and working really hard and getting a lot of no's and really getting battle tested, and getting out of our comfort zone, because we were not, me in particular was not an outgoing kind of a person. I didn't really want to, work in sales or do. I just wanted to be rich. I thought,
Yeah.
again, I was going to invent my way there.
Yeah.
So it really forced me to do some things that I didn't think I could do and didn't want to do. And then I looked back and found out that A, it wasn't so bad, and B, I was pretty good at it, actually.
So what would be some tips that you learned to overcome that challenge of not wanting to sell? Because I know a lot of small business owners, that's the one thing they hate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of them, but the first thing I think of is your why, right? I mean, Simon Sinek says it's the why, what motivates you, and the only reason I did it was because I again had these dreams and goals that I wanted to pursue, and I realized that the only way I was going to get there was to sell, to go out and grow my business and get out of the comfort zone. I think part of it too, a tip would be if you can learn your lines. I heard someone say a long time ago that who started in sales in a different field, has since become a friend. He said the reason why he became so successful, and he was like a top producer in his field by far, was he learned all of the objections that people were going to come up with, and all the sort of arguments pretty fast. And he spent time cultivating, possible responses. Okay, well, how do I answer that? How do I deal with that? And got comfortable with that. And then as he learned those, sort of all the worst case answers, that you're going to get, then he wasn't as apprehensive or afraid to go into those conversations with people, because he knew his lines. He knew there pretty much wasn't anything that they were going to say that was going to throw him off. And so he was a lot more comfortable. And as a result of being more comfortable in sort of the possibilities, many times they didn't even come up, because now because he's comfortable, he's confident. And when you're confident and you believe in what you're doing and you believe that you can represent it well, sales is easy, right? And I think what he learned and what I've learned since is that we're really not selling. We're just presenting an opportunity for somebody. And if it's a fit, great. If it's not a fit, great, because it needs to be win-win.
Yeah.
Business people, the last thing you want to do is develop a big client base of people that you don't want to work with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or that you're forcing into what you're trying to sell, or, you're twisting people's arms, or, and that's really not what you're doing. It's just somebody says you're just turning over stones, right? You're looking to see, okay, there's a diamond here somewhere, and eventually you'll find it, but you don't know on which stone it's going to be under. You just go through the process, and and so that helped me a lot to realize, hey, there's only a few objections I'm going to get, and I can learn to deal with that, and then be intelligent about it and say, okay, why, and try to go a little deeper. Why are they responding that way? And it just raises your confidence.
Yeah, as a business coach myself, I kind of like to throw a nugget in there or piggyback on top of something that I hear business owners really need to relate to or hear again. And one of the things you said was to the effect that you don't want to work with everybody, because not everybody's going to be a fit for you. And I have a past client, this is a perfect example, that came to me, a big, big, big opportunity for one of their prospects. But after 3 weeks, and all the missed phone calls, the missed meetings, the meetings that they were there an hour and a half late saying, hey, I'm on my way. 30 minutes later, still not there. Well, we didn't know they were driving an hour and a half away. On your way sounds like I'm almost there. But anyways,
Right.
and they were real disappointed. They kept working this. I said, this is what you're going to be working with after they start paying you too, times 10, because now they're paying you to be there. I'm like,
Right.
so that is a huge lesson for business owners is you don't have to work with everybody. And just because the money's there doesn't mean you're going to be happy when you start working with them. So kind of use that internal gut that, not everybody's a fit, and know when to walk away.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we're all sort of given, I'm a faithful guy. I really believe that we're all sort of given our own mission field, right, of people to
Absolutely.
serve. And so we're not really competing with each other. We're really just trying to serve the best in our field, and not everybody is a fit. And I've learned too that I'd rather get a fast no than a long maybe, right?
Yes. Yes. I,
Let's just deal with this, man. Yes or no. And
yeah.
and a lot of times, as you just indicated, it's the signals that they're throwing out as well. It's not necessarily the words they're using, but the signals when they're showing up late or they're not returning your phone
Yeah.
calls. Or there's one thing about being persistent, sure, but there's also a line about being, you're, and I see business owners do this, and I would imagine as a coach, you really see it. And I have done this where you fool yourself into thinking you've got something you don't have. From a sales pipeline, well, I've got this full pipeline of all these potential buyers, but at the end of the day, do you really?
Yeah.
Maybe 20% of them or 30% of them are ultimately going to be buyers, and the rest are just distractions and
Hmm.
sort of feel good for you that, okay, I think I've got a good business, but it's preventing you from doing the thing you need to be doing, right, to
Yeah.
to get more of the 20 to 30% that are actually going to buy. And so other people can fool us about 50% of the time, but we can fool ourselves 100% of the time.
No, for sure. For sure.
Right.
I always say get to the no fast. No, get to the no fast, because most people I found, they can't, people are still human. They're empathetic. Most people can't tell you no.
Yeah.
That's why they always say, I'll think about it. Maybe next quarter, but for some
Right.
reason they can't say no. So take that as your no, or say, does that mean no then? It's okay to say no. So I love that. So those are good sales tips. So moving along here, you poo-pooed your first little project and you kind of got dabbled in some other areas. Tell us about those adventures and some of the pivots you learned that got you where you are today. And then I want to talk about what you do, because you're a wealth of information. So let's start with some of your other pivots.
Yeah, so I have some pivots. So, in this relationship, that my first business, my wife and I were involved for quite some time, for a number of years. And like I said, we had some pretty good success out of the gate. But over a period of time, we ran into a situation where we started kind of butting heads with my sister and brother-in-law and some other things that were going on. We kind of felt like we hit sort of a glass ceiling. Now, whether that's true or not, could be debated. But where we were in our head at that point, we felt like, okay, we could go to another level, and we need to be thinking about what can we do. We've learned all these skills, we've experienced a lot. We've learned a lot about dealing with people and ourselves, and so kind of in this period of time where we're searching. One of my good friends had gotten into the residential real estate business, the finance side, the mortgage business, basically back in the 90s. He was doing really well, and he really liked it. And about the same time, my wife and I went out and bought our first house. And the experience that we had on buying the home, the financing was really wasn't that good, to be honest with you. There was a lot of surprises. We didn't know what to expect. It just wasn't a great experience. And so I sort of connected the dots and thought, well, here's a friend that's doing this well, and I love math, and numbers are my thing, and I bet I could do this better. And so the long story short was, as an entrepreneur, I didn't know anything about the business. I just knew math, and I had my other business going. It was producing a pretty good income consistently, and I was almost phoning it in at that point in time. So I had some flexibility in my schedule, and I thought, well, what's the best way to learn this business? So I opened up the newspaper when we used to have those, when I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and found a local mortgage company that was hiring people. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I'll just see if I can get a local job during the day, because I've got time and flexibility and I can learn. And so long story short, I did, got a job. And within about 2 months, I was the top producer, because of the skills I had already learned on dealing with people. And I was working with other people that were in sales that were afraid to pick up the phone. And I was like, oh, I crossed that bridge a long time ago. so I learned it, and then I learned the business and everything. And so I said, well, gosh, if I can do this, now it's time to pivot and do my own thing. And so got my own license, started my own business. And so from there, we started our own residential lending company, moved to Virginia at the same time, and spun that up. It did really well and had some secondary businesses from that. Had a title company, and I had a few other things, and was going really well and growing by gangbusters, and had we're expanding into multiple offices and had a bunch of employees. I think we were probably at, I don't know, 50 employees over time.
Mm.
And so you talk about pivot. So in this period of time, we said goodbye to the first business completely and really kind of focused on this one. And again, it went really well. Well, you remember 2007 and 2008,
Yep.
of course, right? The Great Recession. Well, we knew that the market was going to change. In fact, it had gotten really bad around 2004 because we couldn't give good service anymore because, so many people were getting in the business. Everybody was like, all the service related industries, like the insurance people, the title people, the appraisers, were all just taxed beyond their capability, and so it was just becoming bad. Well, didn't do well through that transition. Basically, we had been funding a lot of our own loans, and fortunately, we stopped doing that about 6 months before the market crashed, and so it was good. So basically, I went from a business that I was positioning to sell because it was very profitable and we had a really good brand in our local area in Virginia, to a business that we had customers for, but all of our funding sources completely disappeared overnight. I mean, there was nothing there. And so we couldn't lend any money. And so what do you do when you have a staff of overhead? You've got offices, you've got, space, you've got all that. So we had to make some hard decisions and make some cuts and things. And that was the first experience in my life from business. Every business had been, success, and sort of on the way up. And that was the first time that we suffered a setback. And that's a, well, just being nice, we call it a setback. It was going from a very high income in a business worth a lot of money to a negative income, because now we're paying people. I think our overhead was like $40,000 a month just for employees. And it's like, and you got zero revenue coming in. It doesn't take long to start doing the math to figure out, okay, we're dipping into savings, and how long is this going to go? So we ended up shutting the business down, didn't have to go bankrupt or anything like that. We were very blessed, but we did have to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with our life at this point? And so through some of the connections I'd set up, and just friends I'd developed, I put the word out that, hey, I'm right now, I'm not, I'm available. I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Yep.
So a friend through an organization I was part of at the time called C12, and still am actually, he reached out and said, hey, he had a company he was growing in the technology space and needed somebody to help with marketing. And I'm like, okay, well, hey, I studied technology and I know math and I know marketing, so why not? So I'll team up with him and actually go to work for him as an employee, which was the hardest thing I've ever done, because it was like, in my mind, I'm admitting failure, right? I'm like, I haven't worked for somebody, and here I am doing what?
A job.
And and not only that, I was having to drive like an hour to get there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, to me, it's like the antithesis of everything that I had, believed in and pursued and went after. And it was a rough time, I'll be honest with you. But a funny thing happens. So, my wife and I are very faithful, as I said, and we try to maintain our faith, and we're always looking for, okay, what's the opportunity here, right? We can, we're not going to stay down forever. And so my friend and I came up with a business idea to basically spin off a little piece of the business that he was doing that we could build and grow, and I could be part of that and be part owner and run it and grow it. And we could use a lot of his similar customer base and so forth. And so anyway, we ended up doing that. And over the course of a few years, built a company, and then we're able to spin that off and sell it. And so it went from, we went to the, when I say the pit of hell, and to now we're cranking again, right? And and sold. So the back to your pivot story, it was like, okay, it was like you got to look in the mirror. It's like everything that you thought that you'd put your time, sweat, blood, tears in and hope into is just eviscerated literally overnight. And it wasn't, everyone knew things were going to slow down, but it was cataclysmic. It wasn't a slowdown. And so you really got to dig deep at that point. And that's what we did. And realizing that, this too will pass. We don't know the answer on how it's going to turn out, but we always bounce. We're going to win. We're going to figure out a way. And eventually, and it took longer than I hoped for. It took a few years to kind of position in there, right? But eventually we did.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is sponsored by Boss, where business ownership is simplified for success. Boss helps business owners create a business that runs without them, with business consulting from business coaches who have actually owned businesses before, and business loans in as little as 24 to 48 hours, online courses, workbooks, classes, and much, much more. Go to businessownershipsimplified.com to learn why small business success starts with Boss. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to stay up to date with all of our episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, or leave a positive review. Now let's get back to our guest. That's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing that because I know a lot of business owners go through those things, but when they look at other business owners, like when you were at the top of the peak, they're like, oh, he's got it made. Why is everything going right for him? And they don't realize you still have a story too, that you're going through. We just don't publicly announce it until we're on a podcast. So and we're trying to help other people. So I really want business owners to hear they're not doing anything wrong. We all go through challenges. There's pivots, there's ebbs, there's flows. I've filed a bankruptcy before due to a cancerous partnership and had to rebound. I've been in that low place. And one of the best advice is, so I know I'm a business coach. Our company has business coaches, but I hire my own coaches as well. And he told me at that time, and I didn't have any doubt. I was like you. I was like, this too will pass. Something's going to turn around. Just keep going. But he told me, he said, I have no doubt you're going to make it. And I said, why would you say that? And he said, well, just in case there's a little bit of doubt in your head, he said, I have no doubt you'll rebound 10 times better than you were. And I asked him why he said that. And he said, well, because now you know what to do and what not to do. Now go do those things you know to do again, and you'll do them better. So I'll never forget that. I'm like, you're right. There are things that I do know that someone just starting a business or that has a job, they don't know those things. So, it's all that grit, that experience. And I think there's something about entrepreneurs. It's kind of like once you get that first patch, that arm patch of being an entrepreneur, I can relate to your story because when I had to file bankruptcy, my wife even said, you're not going to get a job, are you? And I was like, well, I've been an entrepreneur for 22 decades, no, I'm not, I'm not. So anyway, so I know it's just that humbling experience, you feel like you lose your freedom, everything about you, your manlyhood or whatever, it's tough.
Well, yeah, no, that's it. You're right. It really challenges the core of what your self-image is and how you think about yourself.
Yeah. So moving along to where you are today, you have a unique business that really helps business owners. So let's talk about that so that we can get to the meat of how you help and serve other people.
During this whole process of that last company, that technology company that we built and sold, I kept having this yearning and desire to go back into real estate finance. But I wasn't really interested in residential real estate finance. I wanted to go into commercial because all of my contacts and friends were business owners and entrepreneurs, and all the round tables I've been on and associations, I just know, what we all sort of go through is kind of my tribe. And, I can't tell you how many of them, and I'm sure you see them as a coach, they develop these businesses that end up spinning off really good cash. And what typically happens is the business owner will raise their lifestyle to the level of their income, right? And so, yes, they have a good lifestyle and many times better than most, but they're not really building something that they can that's a tangible asset long term, right? Now, some of the really sophisticated ones do, and the ones that really learn how to build systems and people and work on the product of the business, and that's achievable for anybody, but it's a process, right? It takes time. It takes a lot of learning. I mean, you can read a book about it. That's one thing. But to your point, you definitely need a coach. I've had coaches, many coaches over my years too, because you need a third party kind of looking around the corner. Even today, I do it. We have a round table, and it's once a month, and an individual coaching where it's like, hey, here's what's going on. Here are my challenges, and then you get perspectives from other people that have gone through it, and maybe different industries, but have been there. But outside of that, and building a business that has systems, even with that, at some point you have an exit strategy, right? That's either you're going to retire and just stop doing it, you're going to pass your business on, hopefully to a family member. Maybe you want to sell your business as an option. These are all great options, and the thing is that when you build a business, depending on how it's structured, the value is going to vary pretty widely. So what I started to see was with the business owners that I knew that owned the building or the space that they operate their business out of, their businesses had a much higher tangible value. It had a higher resale value. When they were looking to sell, they had something other than what we call blue sky and a customer base, which can be sellable, and there's value there for sure. But the financing terms on being able to buy that are a lot different than if there's real estate involved with it. I've seen others that sadly had worked, 30 years in business, had a good income. In fact, my wife was telling me about one just the other day that she a new friend she ran into, 30 years, some kind of a consulting business, and they rented their space the entire time, and they're closing their business. Well, if they had bought the bid, he was swearing off the fact that he should have bought the building, because if he did that, 30 years is going to pass, 20 years is going to pass either way, and you're either going to pay rent to someone and have nothing left over, or you're going to have a tangible asset that you can then sell, or you can rent out to someone else. One of my friends and clients, Kathy O, is she's an OBGYN. She bought her building about 12, 13 years ago because her husband, Jim, was kind of pushing her into it. And she's since paid the building off. She was going to have her medical practice in the building either way. Well, a couple of years ago, one of these larger medical groups came in, and they buy up to smaller practices. So she's like, yes, I want to sell because I want to retire here in the next 3, 4, 5 years. So she sold him her practice, negotiated to be able to stay there and work up to the next 5 years, kind of on her own terms. So she gets a salary, she got a payout. And oh, by the way, since all their patients in the practice is coming to that building, that location, this group is now paying her rent for the building. So she's got a like $10,000+ a month stream of income coming in on the building, whether she ever shows up and does another pap smear or not, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, she's got choices. She can, when she retires, she can continue to let them rent it. She could sell them the building. She could sell it to someone else. You could take it and 1031 it into some other real estate. And so there's a lot of options. So I would see these different groups of business owners, Michael, that had a lot because they made that choice early on, versus the ones that didn't have nearly the choice, thinking they're going to sell a business, for a ton of money, and it's just a business with a customer base, and you might even be the only one, is the magic in the thing, which is not worth a whole lot. So,
Right.
I was inspired. And so that's really our focus, is helping business owners, entrepreneurs who are in a position to do it. And not everybody is. I mean, if it's a startup or you're kind of struggling to make profit and kind of get your sea legs, and it doesn't make sense. You got to get that squared away. But if you've got a business and it's succeeding and it's profitable, and you need a local presence for some reason, again, you've got customers that are visiting, employees, patients, people have to come. It's not a virtual business, right? Where you can run anywhere around the world. And you've got a growth curve. You think, you're going to be around 5, 6, 7, 10 years from now because of your plan. And so many of them are service businesses like
Yeah.
HVAC, plumbing companies, contractors, lawn care. We deal with a lot of professionals like dentists, doctors, chiropractors, CPAs lawyers that want to buy their building, right? Because they're building a practice locally. And so we help them do it. We educate them and show them the benefits and what they're losing if they don't do it, and the opportunity that they have if they consider doing it.
That's golden because I have worked with a lot of business owners over my years of coaching, and all of those who owned a business, their business was worth more than their business. The building itself was worth more than the business. And so for a lot of them, like the contractors you talk about and stuff, I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but if you're the owner and you're still working as the plumber or the electrician, your business is not going to be worth anything when you're ready to get rid of it, unfortunately, because you are the business. You're the brains. And so even if they were to buy that book of list, it's still not really worth anything because it's usually a relationship with the business owner. So this is good information because, like I said, the business owners that actually owned their buildings or a building or two or three, how many ever, they came out way further ahead in retirement than the ones that just struggled throughout life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, in one sense, it's a forced retirement program because you're forced to make the payment, like you're forced to make your lease payment, but it's part of that's going into your equity bucket for the future.
Yeah.
And not too much different from your personal residence. I mean, why do you buy your own home versus rent? Most people buy
Right.
because by the time they retire, they want a paid off home. And then, you can live there without a mortgage, or you could they're doing reverse mortgages now where it can be a retirement stream for people. A lot of people are doing that. But it's generally the biggest asset that people have is their personal home. So to your point of if you have a business, it's what you've seen anecdotally is that it's generally the biggest asset that these businesses have too after a period of time, right? Is that building. And so if you forego that opportunity, then you forego this huge benefit, not to mention all the other things along the way, the tax advantages of having the building where you can defer some of the income, the equity appreciation, because we know real estate goes up in time over value, goes up in value over time, not in a straight line. And it can be in short term, it can go down. But generally, if you look back 10, 15, 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
my parents bought their first house, for $30,000 and, in the 70s or 69, same house today is 600,000. So it's an inflation hedge, if anything. It is what a lot of our clients do is they'll buy or build a space a little bit larger than they need and they'll lease part of it out. So then the tenant will pay part of the freight. So they actually can get in the building for less monthly expense than leasing. They don't have to worry about, rent escalations in their lease. They don't have to worry about lease non-renewals when it comes up and the landlord says, I think I've got a better use for my building now.
Yeah.
Amazon wants to put in a storage center here or distribution center, and so we're going to sell them the land. Which, if you've got a business that's just an office business and you have employees, probably not that big of a deal. You can relocate. But if you have a location that may be retail related, like a restaurant, and all your customers are right there within a couple of miles, or even a dentist or a doctor, and they're right there, people don't want to drive across town to go to their dentist or to their pizza place, right? I mean, there's a pizza place on every couple of corners, So those are things, operational control and limitations. And what about even building a space out that suits a better process so you can be more efficient? Steve is one of my clients. He's a commercial builder, but one of his side hustles was he had 50-50 ownership in a cabinet company. He let the other guy run it and he was just kind of a silent partner. Well, the other guy decided he wanted to sell. And so Steve said, hey, I'll buy you out. And so he bought him out and he brought in a manager who was someone who was really trained in like Six Sigma and, these, high-end process and how to be really efficient. Anyway, together they retooled the building. They had to rip out some walls and renovate it. And they brought in a new piece of machinery and they could do that without asking for permission because Steve owned the building.
Yeah.
Right. And because if you go to your landlord and ask them to do that, they might allow it, they might not allow it. If they do allow it, you're going to pay for it. And so now you're improving someone else's space. And you're like, well, they'll just put it into the lease. Okay, yeah, but then you're paying for it because your lease
Yeah.
rate's going to go up, or you're going to lock you in for a longer time, or whatnot. So they literally, at the end of this, with this pretty much the same staff, were able to almost double their output in the same location with about the same staff, just because they were able to reconfigure things and bring someone in that understood process. So there's a lot of advantages to it. Opportunity costs, you could look at it if you're not doing it. And so then you got to ask the question, which you're probably going to ask, I'll throw it out there, is why don't people do
Yeah.
it more?
It's a fair question. Yeah, you read my mind, sir.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about it. I think a lot of business owners are, and you as a coach can validate this more than me, but I would say most of them are heads down working in their business instead of working on the business, right?
Yep.
So they're operationally involved, they're focused day to day, they're putting out fires, they're trying to grow, they're paying the bill, they're doing all these things. And so they don't even think about it, right? I mean, they get a lease renewal email or a phone call from the realtor or the landlord says, "Hey, your lease is up for renewal in 30 days."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 30 days is way too short of a timeline to be thinking about buying a building.
Right.
So I think that's one reason. I think another reason is a misconception is a lot of people think it takes a large down payment. Commercial space is generally more expensive than residential. And if you saunter down to your local banker, he'll tell you in most cases you need 25% down. And so if you're going to buy a $500,000 building or $1 million building, you're looking at, $100,000 to $200,000 down, and it's a lot of money. And you may have it, but you may not want to take it out of your operating account, for your cash flow and your working capital, and just put it into bricks and mortar and bury it in the dirt, basically. So, but the reality is it doesn't take that. You can get into a commercial space if you're going to move your business in and operate your business there for 0% down. Typically 0 to 10. We like to say 10% in most cases, but we can go 5 or 0, just depending on the case if the business is really cash flowing. So there are options out there
What
that
is
people
that?
don't realize.
Yeah. What's that term is it owner occupied?
Yeah, owner occupied commercial space. So everybody sort of understands it in residential that I'm going to live in it, right? As an owner. Similar to commercial, your business is going to live in it. So if your business lives in 50% of the building, if it's an existing business, then it's considered owner occupied. If you're building a new building to suit, as we have people do, then it needs to be 60%. So which means you could lease out the other space.
Yeah,
The other thing about that too is just before you move on is that, like, you talked about maybe owning multiple buildings. Well, let's say you listen to Michael and you scale the business up and you got systems and people and you're able to grow it, and you're maybe not all in your business now, but you're more on your business, and you want to expand into a different location. Well, you can buy a second building across town as an owner occupied building. You can be in 2 owner occupied buildings, or 3 or 4, as long as your business is primarily the one operating at least 50% of the space. So I have a dentist that he did that. He came out of dental school with this idea that he wanted to build a dental business. He didn't really want to pull teeth and fill holes. So smart guy. And so after a few years, he had a profitable business. So he bought the building, but his goal was really to buy multiple buildings and then hire dental graduates and put them as employees to run his dental practice.
Smart.
And so he's got, I think, 5 buildings now over about 10 years. And so he's got a massive real estate business in addition to the dental business.
Yeah.
Right. And his dental businesses pay rent to his real estate business, which he owns, and the real estate company depreciates all that. The building it offsets the income, the rental income, and it's just a beautiful thing for him.
No, man. Yeah, we've got a chiropractor that I know of that does that here too. He gets fresh graduates out of school to actually do the work, if you will. Now he has his license, as a chiropractor, but he didn't want to be a chiropractor. So it sounds like it's kind of the same story, which is smart. At least you know what you're providing, the service or level of service that you should be providing in that industry, but you're not actually doing it. So that's a great story. Well, you have so much more information to share. What's the best way people can follow you, connect with you? Is there something you want to offer to the listeners to go check out?
Yeah, for sure. So I wrote a book, Unleash Your Business, Unlock Wealth, Autonomy, and Control by Buying Your Building and Firing Your Landlord.
Okay.
And I'm giving it away for free. You just had
Oh,
to pay
wow.
shipping.
Well,
Yeah,
I think ears perked. You said free,
free.
and now
Yeah,
everybody's
yeah.
like, "What's free again?"
Yeah, it's free. Just pay shipping because we got to get this thing printed and then send it out to you. But so if you go to our website for that, it's simple. It's ownyourbuildingnow.com.
Okay.
Ownyourbuildingnow.com. You could pick up a free copy. In addition to that, I also have this assessment. It's a 90-second to 2-minute commitment of your life. Okay, it's very fast.
Yeah.
And it's 20 questions, and it helps you answer the main question, and that is, is buying commercial property right for my business? And it's free. We don't charge anything for that. And it'll give you an analysis, a custom breakdown based on your answers to the 20 questions in 4 key categories. So it's real helpful to kind of get a baseline of where you are. And it gives you some insights on what you can do. And of course, after all that, we're certainly available for, we can do an ownership strategy session call and just have a conversation, see if it makes sense. But as far as, first place, I'd say check the book out or the assessment, and it really kind of paves the way to, a level of understanding. Then we can have a really intelligent conversation at that point, if it makes
Are
sense.
you on social media at all?
Somewhere, I think.
Okay,
We have
not very active then.
I have a podcast. I host a podcast called the Brick and Mortar Money Show.
Okay,
And you
go
can
check
find
it out.
the Brick and Mortar Money Show, and a YouTube channel. It's called the Entrepreneurial Agent. And people ask me, why do you call it that? And it's like, well, I kind of look at myself as almost like a sports agent, Jerry Maguire. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna help my entrepreneur buds, make as much money and have the best lifestyle they can have. And so I'm more like their agent. And so you can check out the YouTube channel, and I'm out there in other places. But
Well, I love this concept. It's because a lot of business owners, we think about growing our business, but we don't think about growing our wealth. And this is an avenue that's not really talked about very often. I do have some guests and things like that that's been on here, and they talk about residential investments, but not commercial. So I appreciate you sharing this information. Last question before we get off here. If there was a room full of business owners, what one advice do you think would be applicable for all of them? It could be a life lesson, something you've learned, or something you're still learning.
yeah, I'd say the biggest lesson that I'm still learning and relearning is really to cultivate a clear vision of where you want to go. Because I think we are goal seeking individuals. We're created to realize a vision, and goals and everything kind of funnels down out of all that. But it starts with, what do you want your life to look like? And then from there, what do you want your business to be? I mean, really, what do you want it to see that you can internalize and have that picture to really focus on? Because, at the end of the day, we have this thing called the automatic mind that focuses us, and it does things, by habit that determine a lot of outcomes. But you have to set the thermostat and tell it what you're after, right? And really just making that vivid and being all about that mission. Because at the end of the day, you're going to look back and you're like, okay, what did I do?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Paul, you've been wonderful. You've been a blessing today to a lot of people. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you around.
Okay, Michael, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Welcome to the Recap and Coach's Corner, where I share actionable coaching advice to help you create a business that runs without you. In this episode, we had the pleasure of sitting down with Paul Neal, a former engineer who pivoted to entrepreneurship and established a strong presence in the commercial real estate finance sector. Paul demystifies the process of transitioning from tenant to property owner, presenting it as a viable and strategic move that secures a future income stream, leverages tax advantages, and crafts a legacy that will endure long after retirement. He emphasizes that commercial real estate ownership is about asserting control over your business destiny and building value that appreciates over time. We also discuss the importance of cultivating confidence and mastering the art of handling objections in sales. Quality trumps quantity in entrepreneurship, and not every prospect deserves a seat at your table. And this leads us into my Coach's Corner, where I share actionable advice you can implement today for a successful future. It's all based on clarity. For your actionable item this week, focus on discovering the clarity in your business for your future success. Start by doing these few things. Define your ideal client. Review your sales process to determine who your ideal clients are. Look at your most successful client relationships and identify common characteristics and go find more. Evaluate your business vision. Reflect on your long-term goals and consider how they align with your current business trajectory. Ask yourself if owning commercial real estate fits into your future plans. Next, set clear goals. Establish specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, also known as SMART goals, to guide your business decisions. Clear goals will help you maintain focus and direct your efforts effectively. Next, streamline sales processes. Simplify and refine your sales process to ensure it aligns with your ideal client profile. This will help you attract the right clients and improve your conversion rates. By taking these steps, a lot I know, you'll gain greater clarity in your business operations and strategic direction, setting the stage for future growth and success. This sounds daunting, I know. I've given you a lot to do. So if you need help, let our professional business coaches help you from Boss. Go to businessownershipsimplified.com and schedule a complimentary conversation to get started. Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. Please don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast. If your business is stuck or you need help creating your business to run without you, go to our website, businessownershipsimplified.com, and schedule a complimentary consultation to learn why small business success starts with Boss. If you want to talk anything small business related, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.